The hands-off movement, Duke, didn't just sprout out of nowhere. It's a response to a cocktail of policy changes that many view as a coordinated attack on civil liberties and social programs. For instance, you've got federal downsizing spearheaded by Elon Musk. Yes, Musk, who's turned into quite the polarizing figure here. Downsizing not just agencies, but laying off federal workers en masse. And cuts to Social Security? That hits the most vulnerable, our seniors, the backbone of this nation.
You make that sound like some strategic masterstroke, Emeka. But let's call it what it is. Necessary trimming of the fat. Government's bloated, inefficient. Sure, some old-timers are affected, but there's gotta be sacrifices if we're gonna balance the budget. Heck, even you know every battalion needs a lean fighting force.
Sacrifices. Duke, the question is, whose sacrifices? It's the vulnerable citizens paying the price. Remember the Igbo saying, "He who cuts down the Iroko tree must be ready for the fallout." Social Security isn't just a tree, it's a forest that sustains millions, including veterans like us.
Fine, I'll give you that. Social Security's a tough nut to crack. But let's not skip what this movement's really about. A sloganeering juggernaut. Hands off. Sure, it gets attention, but it paints a black and white picture of complex policies. You think every billionaire's out to destroy democracy?
Not every billionaire, Duke, but the concern is who holds the reins. Musk is restructuring federal agencies as if they're startups. That's a red flag. The perception that a billionaire can redesign the government, unchecked, is exactly why the hands-off slogan resonates. It's a rallying cry for democracy and anti-authoritarianism at its core.
It resonates, sure. But let's move past the crying part. What about the tactics they're rolling out? Protests in D.C., Philadelphia, San Francisco. You've got marches, rallies, teach-ins. It sounds like a bunch of noise. What's the game plan here?
Grassroots organizing is a foundation, Duke. These aren't just people creating noise. They're fostering dialogue. Cities like D.C. and Philly weren't chosen at random. They're power centers, both symbolically and logistically. Teach-ins. Those educate protesters on policy implications, empowering them to influence legislative decisions. You see, it's strategic pressure rooted in awareness, not chaos.
Sounds to me like they're just busy building coalitions, not actual solutions. Look, numbers are impressive. 400 protests, millions turned out. But what about keeping that momentum when the headlines move on? You need staying power, not just a good turnout. Otherwise, you're fighting a battle with empty magazines.
That's exactly what these protests tackle, Duke. They're mobilizing long-term. Beyond numbers, they're about presence, visibility. When over 150 organizations come together, like the League of Women Voters and Indivisible, it signals unity. That kind of synergy doesn't fizzle easily if aligned toward clear goals.
Sure, goals are nice, but unity cracks under pressure. Too many different agendas, too many cooks in the kitchen. You think this coalition can keep marching in the same direction, let alone breaking ranks? I've seen more disciplined marches in boot camp.
The measure of unity isn't flawless alignment, Duke. It's shared values. When these protests defend Social Security or LGBTQ+ rights against rollbacks, they bring diverse voices into harmony. It's about finding strength in the very multiplicity you dismiss as division. Like the palm tree, its branches may spread in different directions, but together they weather storms.
Fair enough, Emeka. But we'll see if this tree stays rooted when the gale picks up. People care now, yeah, but how long does sentiment last without strong tactical moves? That's where movements succeed or fall apart. All right, Emeka, you talked about unity and shared values keeping this movement steady, but I've got to ask, does that really hold the line when pressure mounts? Sure, you've got social media fireworks, teach-ins, high-profile speakers, impressive on paper, but back in the field, flashy plans without tight cohesion tend to fall apart when it counts.
Duke, movements like these are not military operations where every soldier follows the same playbook. They thrive on flexibility and adaptability. When you harness tools like social media, it turns into a battleground of ideas, drawing attention and building momentum. It's not just fireworks, it's strategy.
Strategy's great, but let's talk coherence. You've got over 150 organizations involved. Planned Parenthood, League of Women Voters, labor unions, which is fine. But how do you keep them from butting heads over differences? You try herding that many agendas. It's like pushing a Humvee uphill with no engine.
True, coalitions like this carry risks of fragmentation, but the strength lies in shared purpose. Each group may prioritize differently, but defending programs like Social Security or LGBTQ+ rights, that unites them. It's their common ground. Think of it as a joint reconnaissance mission. Different units, same objective.
Yeah, until one unit starts moving east while the other's heading west. And let's not forget media fatigue. People binge these stories on their feed like popcorn, but after 2 weeks, crickets. How do they stay relevant when folks start tuning out?
By staying proactive, Duke. High-profile speakers, for example, reinforce the message. Bringing representatives like Jamie Raskin or Maxwell Frost into the conversation adds credibility and keeps the media spotlight alive. And the non-violent approach? That keeps public sympathy on their side.
Public sympathy only goes so far, Emeka. Non-violence doesn't cover logistics. You need coordination, resources. When the cameras move on, what keeps these coalitions together? A catchy slogan?
Slogans spark dialogue, Duke, but the real glue is grassroots engagement. Teach-ins, for instance, those are not just for speeches. They equip participants with understanding, transforming them into advocates. The goal isn't dependent on media alone. It's about embedding the message within communities.
That's a lot riding on grassroots, Emeka, but I'm betting cracks are already showing. Different organizations, political views, even accusations of this being some astroturfed circus. That's a hard pill to swallow for people already skeptical of the so-called grassroots angle.
Skepticism is expected, Duke, but grassroots doesn't mean perfect alignment. It's about rallying diverse voices toward justice. Every coalition faces internal tensions, just like troops in battle. But the shared belief in defending democracy, economic fairness, and civil rights, those are the stakes keeping them united under fire.
All right, I hear you. But we'll see how this unity holds up. Plenty of movements start big, thunderous even. But staying the course? That's the true battle. And I'm not sure this coalition has the mettle for it. Emeka, you say they're united by purpose, but now that the protests have run their course, what's the scoreboard show? Have they reversed the cuts, changed any laws, or are we looking at another example of fireworks with no lasting heat?
The smoke, as you put it, Duke, has brought heat to policymakers. You've seen state leaders signaling resistance against federal budget cuts, voicing explicit support for Social Security and Medicare. When that kind of dialogue enters state houses, it means the movement's striking chords in governance.
Sure, some lawmakers spoke out. Big deal. Half of them probably did it for the soundbite anyway, not because they actually care. And let's not forget the backlash. Plenty of commentators called this movement outright communist propaganda. What do you make of that?
The propaganda card. It's predictable, Duke. Conservative corners framing this as a leftist hydra don't diminish its substance. They're simply deflecting. Remember the Igbo saying, "When you throw stones at a palm fruit, the ripest ones fall first." The protests hit nerves precisely because they challenge powerful interests.
Okay, but calling every critic a deflector? Come on, Emeka, even you gotta admit these protests aren't spotless. These high-minded slogans, they attract all sorts. You had people out there shouting about fairness, sure, but also calling for full-on wealth redistribution. That's bound to raise eyebrows, man.
Certainly, Duke. Movements like these gather varied voices, some more radical than others. But that doesn't delegitimize the core message. The focus is clear: protecting democracy and civil rights against perceived authoritarianism. It's why global solidarity has rallied around the hands-off moniker. These protests have resonated far beyond our borders.
Sure, fine. They got international attention. But what does that add, really? Foreign sympathy doesn't rewrite laws here. And with our media landscape, attention spans are short. You say this strengthens democracy, but if people forget in 2 months, was any of it worth it?
The value lies in sparking enduring conversations, Duke. When these protests echo internationally, they amplify calls for accountability. Skeptics and ideologues may clash, but history shows us movements that spark debate often leave lasting marks. You've seen it yourself. In any mission, the first step is raising awareness before action follows.
Yeah, awareness is one thing, action's another. And I'm not so sure this coalition's got a second wind. They've been labeled, criticized, even plastered with conspiracy theories. Now comes the grind, when it's not about emotions, but actual resistance. Who's stepping up for round 2?
The grind reveals character, Duke, and these activists, whether marching for fair policy or standing against rollbacks, are persevering precisely because of the stakes. The real question isn't who steps up, it's how these efforts will redefine our political norms. Like the Iroko tree returning after each swell of wind, resilience tells the story here.
All right, Emeka, I'll give you this. You're right that endurance decides the fight, whether we're in the field or the public square. I guess time will tell if this isn't just another flash in the pan. Till then, man, I'll keep my boots grounded.
And grounded we must stay, Duke. As the Igbo say, no matter how heavy the rain, a covered head still stands. Let's hope the conversation started by hands off. Hold that same weight moving forward. On that note, though.
Yeah, we're wrapping up. Folks listening out there, thanks for tagging along. Whether these protests inspire action or spark debate, the one thing that's clear is this: activism ain't going anywhere soon. Emeka, always a pleasure swapping ideas.
Likewise, Duke. And to our listeners, keep challenging perspectives, engaging thoughtfully, and as always, stay rooted. Until next time.